everybody, and welcome back to the Embassy Club for the first in-person power breakfast since February of 2020. I'm Susanna DeBacca, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here bright and early and connecting in person over coffee. And I have to tell you, I certainly appreciate the fact that I don't have to go through the whole rundown that we've been doing for 2 years of what to do if you lose your Zoom connection, all those kinds of backups. But it is a little odd to be in person instead of Zoom. I think I actually wore shoes here this morning. And tried to navigate traffic. Did anybody else? Is anybody supposed to be at the wrestling tournament? Do you know you're at the power breakfast? Okay, it's down the street. But it feels good to be back. It feels good to be back downtown. Can we get a round of applause for that? So this is the first of 3 in our series of power breakfasts, and the topic is very timely as the panel is going to be discussing the future of downtown, which I think we know over the course of the last 2 years has undergone just an enormous amount of adjustment as we have navigated the pandemic. And since Business Publications Corporation is also downtown, I'm certainly interested in the panel for a variety of reasons, from economic development in the state to what really are we doing with our business to help contribute or to think about the future of downtown. Before we meet our panelists and dive into the conversation, though, I want to be sure to introduce and take a moment to thank our 3 sponsors who make this event happen. And first, I'm very pleased to introduce Bankers Trust. Bankers Trust has been a longtime supporter of the Power Breakfast series, and since 1917 has been driven by an unwavering commitment to the success of customers and communities. Bankers Trust provides banking, lending, and wealth management for individuals, businesses, and institutions. And I'm pleased to welcome Don Coffin, who is the president and CEO, to say a few remarks.
Thank you, Suzanne. You know, many of you have probably watched the Super Bowl, and they engaged Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to come up and introduce the Super Bowl. And I suspect, you know, they were looking for someone with a similar physique to introduce this. So here I am. Well, you know, Dwayne starts with a D, Don starts with a D, and in fact, in 9th grade, I was for a time known as The Rock. So I suspect it had something to do with my swimming ability, but yes. So thank you, Suzanne, and happy birthday yesterday, by the way. Happy birthday, Suzanne, yay. And thank everyone at the Business Record for another year of a great series, and we're just proud to be a part of it. Welcome to this event. The Business Record has a great lineup for you, the future of downtown and where we're going, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the comments from the panelists. And I'm also happy, as Suzanne said, to be here in person. And we shouldn't neglect being here in person, and we should take advantage of that. And hopefully you've taken advantage of that by networking with someone you didn't know. And you go up to someone and you shake their hand. If you don't remember, you got to shake their hand and you say hi, and you talk for a minute, and those few minutes can mean a lot to them and to you, and you never know where those connections lead us. So Bankers Trust is all about relationships. We're all about getting to know our customers. We're all about trying to use that information to its fullest, whether that means satisfying their credit needs or their loan needs or their deposit needs. So we're here for you, and I was going to give you a big Bankers Trust commercial, but you don't want to hear that, and so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to, from all of the partners of Bankers Trust that are here today, I want to welcome you to the event, and thank you for allowing us to be a sponsor again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. I mean, Don. that was good. We very much appreciate your support of the Power Breakfast series and also the support that Bankers Trust provides to the community. So thank you. Our next sponsor, BKD, is a national CPA and advisory firm whose Des Moines office provides audit, tax, and consulting services to clients across a wide array of industries. BKD is also a returning sponsor of our Power Breakfast series, and joining us today is partner Heather Townsend McCann. Heather?
Well, thank you. And following The Rock, that's a little bit of a hard act to follow. But thank you. It might. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for having us. And unlike Bankers Trust, we're a little bit of a new sponsor to this event, but really very proud to be a part of this, and very proud to be a part of the community, and really looking forward to today's panel. Really anxious to hear about the future of downtown. I feel that that's very important to the future of business, very important to the future of the community. Again, BKD is a long-standing organization providing unmatched client service to our clients. A big part of what we do is, again, providing advisory and tax services here in Des Moines. My focus is on the manufacturing and distribution part of our practice, but my other partners obviously providing other industry services throughout Iowa. Again, looking forward to what the panelists are going to provide for us today, and really thank the Business Record for letting us be a sponsor.
Thank you, Heather, and to all of our partners at BKD. I'm also very pleased to thank and introduce Brown Winnick. They are a new sponsor for our Power Breakfast series, but they are certainly not new to our community. For over 70 years, Brown Winnick has steadily become one of the region's most distinguished business-focused law firms, helping position their clients for growth and success. And joining us from Brown Winnick is attorney Mark Roth.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Roth, and I'm an attorney at Brown Winnick, where I've practiced the past 20 years, and primarily in corporate and business, but also in election law and campaign finance. And as she said, we were a new sponsor today. We're really pleased. Following Heather and The Rock, that's actually, as Heather said, a tall order. But it's a very important conversation this morning. You know, Brown Winnick is a full-service law firm. We've got clients across the Midwest, nationally, but the bulk of our clients and the core of our clients are here in Iowa and the Midwest. And many of them are located here in downtown Des Moines and throughout the greater metro area. All of our clients are struggling with all the same things of all your businesses have. I should say I'm also the executive director of the Federation of Iowa Insurers. The Federation is made up of the life insurance companies, the health insurance companies, the annuity and financial services companies. Many of those are located downtown Des Moines. They've all struggled with the same things you've all struggled with. We all have the same issues and concerns about what downtown is going to look like. So this panel discussion this morning is extremely timely, not only for our clients, for the Federation's membership. I get questions all the time. What is Des Moines going to do? So I'm really looking forward to the conversation this morning. I'm looking forward to the conversations in the future with all of you. And I want to welcome you to the breakfast this morning.
So thank you again to all of our sponsors. Our moderator today is going to be Chris Konetsky. And I think most of you know Chris. For over 10 years, he has been at the helm of the Business Record. And as I got my coffee, a number of you came up, and my heart was very, very warmed because many of you complimented the work that the Business Record and BPC have done during the pandemic, saying thank you for keeping us connected. Thank you
for keeping us informed when we were locked inside our houses. We felt like we were still a part of the community. That's very much part of the mission of the Business Record, and I give credit to Chris Konetsky and his amazing team for just being on it from day one when the pandemic hit. It's that kind of leadership that prompted me to announce a promotion recently, and Chris has recently been named the group publisher of Business Publications Corporation overall. So he has responsibility not just for the Business Record, but for our magazine and custom division as well. His success with the Business Record, his leadership ability, and his very well-respected reputation across the publishing industry nationally made this very, very natural, very much a natural evolution. So he'll moderate today. Congratulations again, and welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Susanna. Appreciate it. And maybe I should start working on a new title. A group publisher doesn't have quite the same ring as Don's new title. So, the group publisher, yes, thanks. That might stick for me too. All right. So thank you again to all of our sponsors. Let's go ahead and get started. In our 2021 Leaders Survey, 73% of our respondents said they agreed that downtown small businesses and commercial real estate were going to suffer if businesses continued offering remote working to their employees post-pandemic. And another 13% were unsure about the effects. This was also done pre-Omicron, that wave coming through. So I think there's obviously been a continuation of some of the challenges that we felt at that point. Between changing customer demand and issues with staffing, downtown small businesses are being challenged, while office vacancies continue to be at much higher rates than they were pre-pandemic. Yet development continues to move forward, and there's a number of large projects that are continuing to be pursued. But as the pandemic continues to ebb and flow through the different waves, there remain a number of questions about the health and vibrancy of downtown, and of course, what the effects could have on our region as a whole. And I think what's been fun to a certain degree preparing for this discussion, we've had other panels on downtown before, specifically back to 2009, talking about the health of downtown and why it was so important. And at that time, there was a lot more, I would say maybe more convincing needing to be done about why the health of downtown was so important to the overall region's health. I think one of the nice parts about today is we're starting from a place where there's recognition that the downtown core is so important ultimately to the overall health of the region. And that allows us to really talk about some of the solutions that we're eventually going to get to today. So we're going to zero in a little bit on not only what's happening in the existing landscape, so the panelists are going to help us understand what some of the challenges are, what some of the maybe short-term outlook might look like for employees coming back into the office, and then we're also going to lean on them to help provide a look at the future, maybe a little bit long-term, and of course, look at those solutions to help make sure that we're really making sure that Des Moines is really thriving. As I mentioned, we've got a great group of panelists. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them now. First up, we have Marcus Ashworth. He's an entrepreneur, developer, and a whiskey distiller here in Des Moines. He's currently working on a $10 million multi-use project on 6th Avenue. Next, we have Stacy Bennett. She's the executive director at the Des Moines Downtown Chamber. She's been in the role just over a year. February 1st was her one-year anniversary, so she came in right in the thick of things. So her perspective is going to be fantastic to hear today as well. Next, we have TJ Jacobs. He's the vice president at CBRE Hubble, CBRE Hubble Commercial, and he's got an expert pulse on the office market here in Des Moines and outside the market as well. He's been on some panels in the past specific to office, and he'll be able to provide that perspective. Next, we've got Erin Olson-Douglas. She's the Director of Development Services for the City of Des Moines. She's overseen development effort at the city for a number of years. She's a frequent panelist at our events. We're neighbors, so I get to, of course, talk about economic development when we're walking our children, but maybe not quite. But she's going to be a fantastic perspective to bring to the group today. And then lastly, we've got Tiffany Tauscheck. She's the Chief Operations Officer of the Greater Des Moines Partnership. She's been integral to the partnership's efforts to help downtown, has been meeting with a number of businesses, and is integrally involved in the downtown vision plan. As a reminder, we haven't been able to take questions from the audience in quite the same way in the Zoom world, but this is, we will open it up for a question or two from the audience to get things going after I ask a few questions just to kick us off. So if you have a question, there's only going to be 2 to 3 probably that we'll be able to work in. And what I always say is that usually it's by the end when everybody starts livening up a little bit and they've got their questions ready to go, and then we can't quite get to all of them. So if you want to make sure your question gets answered, be sure to be that first person with your hand up nice and high, and we'll get you going. All right, first question, and we're going to start off. We're going to drill into the challenges a little bit. So, Marcus, we'll have you go first. What is the biggest challenge that downtown faces as a result of the pandemic and shifting work-life habits?
Well, I can say specifically in my business, this hasn't really been an issue. You know, you have to be on site to make liquor. You have to be on site to do a lot of some of these things. I'd say one of the biggest challenges that I have seen is pay. You know, it's hard to compete and have someone come out of their house in a pandemic and work when they can make slightly more from home, from the comfort in their pajamas. And so I think finding ways that we can leverage better position to get people out and to find those advantages in working are the top priorities. So
great, thanks, Marcus. Stacy.
I think we've seen over the past, 10 or 20 years in downtown Des Moines, we've seen the shift where everything was happening during the day. We had all the workers and then it was dead at night. And then now it's that opposite where it's hard to see people around during the day. You're not seeing people walking down the street. And then I was down at Centro the other night and it was packed. And so it's trying to create that balance and make sure that we are a vibrant, thriving downtown all through the day and the night. And so I think that, really focusing on how to bring people downtown during the day when they're working at home in their pajamas, or even, the challenge that we face with getting people out in the evening when you've been at home in your pajamas all day, and what's going to really inspire you to come out and explore downtown during the week, during the weekend. So I think that's a big challenge.
Great. TJ.
Sure. Chris, as you mentioned with CB Richard Ellis, and as far as my perspective coming from a commercial brokerage and specifically an office, my job on a day-to-day basis is to work with, whether it's the C-suite, so the CFO, CEO, COO, on decisions for a good number of companies. And right now, I think what we're faced with is this assessment phase and trying to understand what the footprint of the companies need to be. And so over the last 2 years, what I've been dealing with is just how we work through, upcoming lease expirations and while also trying to balance the unknown of really what this work-life balance is going to be, how many staff are actually going to be in seats in the office. So, and what that's done is created a lot of uncertainty for landlords, and just this unknown of how much space is out there, and so.
Erin.
I think one of the common themes that we've heard already is the idea that there is a lot of choice being made right now. And that is sort of unfamiliar territory, right? Like people just sort of cruised through lease expirations. People showed up in the morning, they drove downtown, they came to work, they maybe hung around for a little while, or they ran their kids off to soccer. But there was not this sort of minute to minute, day to day, month to month, week to week choice, and that we're seeing right now in sort of all facets of life, whether you're the C-suite executive or the worker in your pajamas, or the supervisor trying to figure out how to navigate all of this, or the worker trying to figure out, do I go into the office? Do I ask for the flexibility? Am I going to miss out if I'm not downtown? I love Tiffany's fear of missing out. I hope we hear more about that today. So I just think there's a lot of choice. And for downtown, I think that means that the pressure is on, once again, now more than ever, to make it the location of choice.
Thanks, Erin. Tiffany.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for this topic. And thanks everybody for coming. I think with challenge comes opportunity. And we are very optimistic about the future of downtown. And we have some data points that really underscore that optimism and help fuel that fire of belief in the future of downtown. I'll share a couple of those with you now. One is in July of 2021, the number of people downtown surpassed pre-pandemic levels. Also, we're a month and a half into the new year. We're averaging 90% of pre-pandemic levels for people downtown. When we look at restaurants, dining in the 50309 area code for the first month and a half of the year, 108% of pre-pandemic levels. We have a lot happening in our downtown. And I think Stacy touched on it very nicely that there's a shift. People are coming downtown different hours than what we saw pre-pandemic. We're seeing them come down later in the day, in the evenings, and on the weekends. We're seeing families, more families come downtown to experience what we have to offer here. So we have a real opportunity to reimagine what our downtown offers and what experiences that we have in our downtown. And the fact that you are all here today, I think shows that you care about our downtown. So we all play a role in making our downtown even stronger and better. And thank you for making the time to be here this morning.
Thanks, Tiffany. And TJ, I want to go back to you here to a good place to always start is we've talked about office. And so I wonder if you could give us maybe a little bit of a look into the numbers of what vacancies have looked like and maybe some comparisons to the past.
Sure. And I'll preface this with early on in my career, I started here in Des Moines for a year, then moved to Omaha and then to Chicago, and then came back here in the mid 2000s. I worked for a large company called Grupp & Ellis and handled their research and worked in their finance area for them. I covered downtown Chicago in the mid 2000s in terms of office. And so within a couple of buildings that I covered, we had more vacancy in 2 buildings than we have on all of downtown Des Moines. So it's all relative in terms of what we're dealing with. I personally currently represent about 500,000 square feet of available space. So that's a large number, larger than I have ever, had the privilege to represent. In terms of vacancy, we're going to be coming out with our latest market trends coming up here later this week. I think we're going to be just under 20% vacant. That is a substantial increase over, if you look over the last 10 years, that's about a 10% increase. You go back to the early 2000s, .com bust, as well as 9/11, there was a pullback in office occupancy. In the 2010s, we saw certainly during the financial crisis a reduction. This time is a little bit different in thinking that we have 3.5% unemployment and we have the highest vacancy we've ever had. So I think that is a different, perspective. It's a great time to be a tenant. Rental rates are softer than they ever have. The one component that I would say in terms of looking at relocation versus, looking at some sort of a longer term, stay in place lease is the cost of construction. That's going to hamper a good number of tenants from relocating. So I think, factoring that in certainly will be important. But going back to the numbers, we have rental rates that are, close to around $16 triple net on average for downtown. Again, that vacancy somewhere just under 20%. But looking into the numbers, and as we walk through, you can dive into that and understand that that's kind of a nice macro point of view for downtown. But you have to think of some of the large blocks of space, and that's where I think for downtown, each of these buildings have a story, and the vacancy has a story. And so I think on the peripheral, both in the East Village, south of downtown, so forth, a lot of the boutique size buildings under 100,000 square feet are doing very well. It's the large blocks of, formerly corporate space that we're seeing that it's a little harder to work with. And I think, I had mentioned construction pricing to demise and or to reduce the size of those footprints. That's part of the reason why I think that you see this vacancy continue to be. But sorry if I took a little too much information or too much time on answering that. But no, I can talk about office space all day. So
Well, that's why we got you here. So, Erin, I wonder if you reacting. Obviously, I'm sure you're in tune with some of those numbers from an economic development standpoint. When you hear that that number at that vacancy rate, what are some of your thoughts on that, and maybe what that might mean for downtown right now?
Sorry, out of practice. All I had to do was lean forward in my computer.
You please, thanks.
I didn't think I was going to hear that.
I know.
Thank you, TJ. That's great. It's a great insight. A few things come to mind. One, Des Moines has done a terrific job over decades of building really quality buildings. And it's one of the things that I think at the City of Des Moines we get some flack over is continuing to require a level of quality. But that is right now is case in point where that is extremely important. So what TJ just said was that construction prices are up. We all know that. We've got vacancy in space. It's quality space. Around downtown, it's really quality space. And if our biggest challenge is finding ways to figure out how to demise that for people who want to go into it, we can figure that out. I feel really confident that if we've got, knowing that we do have good space, that we can figure out the subtenancy sorts of issues. We can work together to figure out some of those things. It's too important not to. I also think that one of the pieces that came out last year about recovery from the pandemic, and there are probably rooms like this filled throughout the country talking about these exact things. This is not a unique situation to Des Moines. I think, as TJ referenced, there are moments in time where we have been in sort of unique situations where we had some great corporate real estate growth, which left vacancies that we had to figure out. We figured that out with housing. That was sort of a unique situation. This is a common situation. Downtowns, urban areas around the country are trying to figure this out. And we were identified by the Wall Street Journal, I believe it was, about 6-9 months ago, for being one of the cities poised for rebound. And I really believe that there has been a lot of groundwork laid over the last couple of decades to make that recovery, be it office, be it downtown in general, really gives us real reason for optimism. We converted a lot of that to third-party Class C office space to residential. And in doing so, we not only took it out of the office market, but we added a level of vibrancy that we haven't seen in downtown ever. We added those residents that Stacy talked about are part of the vibrancy that we see in our restaurants and in our retail, in our coffee shops, at our entertainment in downtown right now. So we have really positioned ourselves well. Our residential vacancy rate is also very low. Our housing costs, and we can talk about affordability, and I think there are some things to talk about with affordability, but the fact of the matter is our housing costs relative to other peer cities, other cities across the country are really low. What we should be talking about are wages, and I think Marcus touched on that as well. So I think there are real reasons for optimism for downtown, and I think there is a resiliency that we can look across the table at people you're sitting around and really compliment each other on. There's a resiliency that we have all collectively accomplished through the last 2 years, whether it felt like it or not at points in time, but there's a resiliency that we accomplished because of the groundwork that we've laid over the last couple of decades. It's a those are statistics that are challenging. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. Those are statistics that are challenging, and they're probably going to get worse before they get better. We need to find those solutions. We need to cultivate business expansions. We need to find those consolidations. We had a good news story here a couple of months ago with Landis coming into our community. We need to find those consolidations, and we really work hard to fill that office space. One of the things that I think at the city we're really concerned about are those assessment values. The assessment values are what have allowed us within the city of Des Moines, within downtown, to really make some progress in our neighborhoods, to really make some progress with infrastructure in downtown and throughout the city. Assessments were one of the things that took a hit in 2008, and we will see some real challenges with the city finances if that happens again.
And I'm going to come back to the city finances and the assessment values, so people have an understanding of that going forward here in a second. But want to go to Stacy to talk. For so many of the businesses that are providing services during the daytime hours, when you don't have that population necessarily maybe at the same level, and that I want to make sure that I'm saying that right, because I'm not quite sure now, but the feeling anyways, right? That feeling that there isn't quite that same downtown population. How are some of the businesses that you're working with through the downtown chamber reacting to that, and what are some of the effects there?
Yeah, I think the service industry is taking the biggest hit on that, and cutting down the number of employees that they have during the day, cutting their hours. We've seen a lot of restaurants that either aren't offering lunch or only offering lunch 2 or 3 of the days during the week. And a lot of that contributed to those employees getting other jobs and not wanting to work in the service industry anymore because of the uncertainty. And now, of course, the service industry is trying to find employees, and the wage issues are huge, because why would somebody go back into a lower paying job once they found something that has more flexibility, offers more money, more benefits? So I think that's a huge challenge of that shift, and trying to deal with that.
You know, Marcus, you've your project up on 6th Avenue. I wonder if you might give just a little bit of an update on that. You started that during the course of the pandemic, and it's on one of the nodes kind of heading into downtown, which I know has been a big focus of the city. And so I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about that project and maybe what you've seen throughout the course of this time.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on some of the things said, I think that one of the main focuses that we've had on building that project is the synergies of the businesses within that actual development, to make sure that there is that all-day activation, to make sure that there is that that ability for the user and the people that live there to be able to use the facility and the space all the time. And I think when looking at downtown and trying to address some of those things, trying to treat downtown similar to how TJ said, if we could find a way to synergize the energy amongst downtown to create that small net and use the opportunity and the fact that, if we're competing against direct to consumer and online and work from home, how do we create that tangible experience downtown that you can't get online?
I think it's whiskey.
Whiskey and bourbon are always the answer.
We'll turn this into a power happy hour next time.
Yes. But that's a part of it, though, I think, is just synergizing, finding ways that those businesses and those spaces and then those communities can work together to create a full, robust experience.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think most people have experienced this in some way. Today is a good example. I'm going to go right down to the office after this because I'm down here, and there's not really an excuse not to. It's actually easier for me. It's more convenient because we had an event down here. So it creates the net, like you said, I'm more likely to buy lunch downtown as well today. So, Tiffany, I want to go to some of the work that you've been doing. You've been talking with a lot of businesses, and this question about the daytime population and whether workers are going to be coming back into the office. And so I wonder if you could provide some insight into maybe some of the things you're seeing in that space and how I know it's fluid, but what maybe the temperature looks like right now.
Sure. So we partnered with Baton Global and Rework on the first ever of its type, community-wide study looking at workforce trends and occupancy. And this is very specific to our downtown, our region. We interviewed over 5,100 participants in this study talking about what do they need, how do they feel about not only downtown, of course, but in office work, or what do they need to do their best work. And we're still digging through the data. And I see John's here. Thanks for being here, John. But we'll share with you just a couple of the insights that we've learned so far. Number one is it's real. We will need to continue as employers to be more flexible. We will need to continue to put an emphasis on benefits, salaries. But really, when we think about the future of work, it is about choice. And it is about, as an employer, figuring out ways to make it so that it is so enticing to be in the office and around your colleagues. It's the, the on-site is the new off-site. So remember we used to do these big off-site meetings and retreats, and we'd spend all this time planning to make it so that it was a true experience for your team. That's what we need to be doing now in the office to help draw them in so that it's a meaningful experience and you're creating moments of connection and opportunity for your teams. So it is different. We're not going to go back to 2019. Maybe that's a good thing. But we're going to have to reimagine what that looks like. There's a lot of other really exciting data and information that we've gleaned from this study, and we'll be sharing that over the next month or so. But another key takeaway, which we were really excited about, is that the number one draw for employees and people to come downtown is cultural events. People want fun stuff to do. And you know what? We got a lot of it. So that was really exciting to see that they're looking for cultural events. Number two is socialization. So again, how can we create those moments of connection? And they're also looking for flexibility, of course. But another key finding is that 86% of those individuals that participated in the study said they would come downtown even more if we continue to invest in our downtown and make, again, more cool stuff happen. And you know what? We're doing it. We've got the Icon Water Trails. We've got the Pro Iowa Soccer Stadium and Global Plaza. Heck, we opened the largest skate park in the United States in the middle of a pandemic, right? I mean, this is a community that bands together. And especially in times of challenge, we lean in and we figure it out together. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're working on the downtown vision plan and action plan. Some communities would have said, why are you working on planning for the future right now in the middle of a pandemic? And we said, because we have to keep looking out and forward. We, yes, need to react to the here and now, the reality of the situation, but we also cannot let up. We have to keep pushing for the future of our downtown and for our region.
TJ, I wonder if you could talk a little bit. You work with clients directly, and obviously not naming names, of course, but if you could talk a little bit about what maybe the sentiment's looking like. You talked about people kind of kicking the lease renewals down the line a little bit, and wondering if you could talk through that sentiment.
Sure, and I think for a good number on the landlord side as well as just on the tenant side, just dealing with the latest variant impacting what the plan is to bring people back, and just that delay after delay after delay. I think, in many ways, people are just kind of tired, and just it's something that it's been an exhausting process, and I think we're still in that assessment phase. I referenced the unemployment rate at 3.5. I think HR right now is in a very precarious position to, what is that bringing people back into the office right now? Do we want to push that? Do we lose people because of it? And I do know a number of staff and recruiters that have said that they will, they talked with individuals that will not work in the office. well, if they're afraid to make decisions based on that, it's challenging. Hopefully, in the coming months, later this year, we'll start to see more of a formal process to bring people back. I think it's going to be a hybrid for sure. It's going to be, if we can get 2 to 3 days out of the work week, in the office, great. I think flexibility, I'll just look at my own life. The pinch points of the day, between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got young kids, and that 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If we can address and allow for those hours to be something that is handled at home and not require, meetings and being in person during that, I think that'll create a lot of flexibility, at least at my age. Now, obviously younger, there could be all kinds of different perspectives. But I think that to me is we're going to be working through that this next year. Again, we're in that middle of that assessment, but I think we'll start to see some more formal plans being made and hopefully seeing more cars in the parking lots downtown. So.
Erin, you mentioned, that number getting worse on the vacancy rate. So I'm just curious, and I don't want to make TJ make it. I promise we won't put this on the cover. But what? Yeah, right. When you look at that vacancy rate, what could that go to? What do you think that looks like? Yeah.
I think for downtown. Likely won't know what the real vacancy is because I think what we'll end up having is more shadow space. So shadow space, and just to help educate on that, corporate groups and occupiers downtown, there's a fair amount of space that they're not in. There's empty desks, there's empty floors potentially. That's not accounted for when we look at our overall vacancy rates and so forth. So I think that's something that we know is available. We know a large number of the large occupiers downtown and a lot of corporate-owned properties downtown that have vacancy. So, whether we are at 20 or 25 or 30% vacant downtown, we shouldn't be scared by that. I think it's going to be a transition. I think it's going to be building by building and what happens there. But we could see a pretty high vacancy overall.
Glad you didn't put a number to it because then I would have put it on the cover. So at this time, I'd like to do is go ahead and open up questions to the audience. And so I'm looking for that first brave, and Catherine has already beaten me to the punch. So, all right, Catherine, speak nice and loud, and I'll try to repeat the question.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of comments on the vacancy. I have an idea. What Marcus is doing is absolutely spectacular with helping to nurture and grow Black and brown businesses, right? His whole ecosystem is important to help those folks flourish and grow. What if he takes that vacancy space and actually create some incubator type activities for entrepreneurs? More entrepreneurs now ever have in history, because that's what history is. Right? So maybe think out the box, become a city that is like for America and all the great places and all the great solutions, all the vacancies and the state parks. Second question. Second question is a lot of responsibility now. Hopefully, I think we're going to work in the world, but we want to know what does that do for us to improve the
So let's start with the entrepreneurship aspect of things, and maybe that can spur us down some solution paths. So Catherine's point was with this open space, what could we be using that space for, particularly Black and brown-owned businesses, entrepreneurs? So Tiffany, maybe from some of the work through the Downtown Vision series, I wonder if you could talk maybe about some of the solutions to fill that space, and then we'll come back to the question on the remote work.
You got it. So the Downtown Vision Plan and Action Plan has been underway for a while now. We're in the process of starting to wrap it up with some of the key findings. And we set out to ensure that this was the most inclusive, community-driven vision plan that our downtown has had. And through this, we have identified a couple of bold ideas I'm not going to share them today because because we're still working through all of that. But Catherine, to your point, absolutely, that is one of the concepts we've talked about on an ongoing basis. Excuse me, is how can we have and create more innovation and also really help spur additional connections with the small business and entrepreneur community. So we do have some ideas baked into that. We also have a commitment to we need to finish some of these big projects that we already have underway in our community, and that's part of this planning process too, is that the community has spoken that they do want to see the Icon Water Trails come to life. They do want to see the Pro Iowa Soccer Stadium and Global Plaza, but small business and that connection to entrepreneurs in particular is another theme that is certainly rising up through the vision plan. We'll have results out in a couple of months, so we'll have lots more to share on that. But I would also say keep the ideas coming. As you're out and about, as you're traveling, if you see really cool ideas in other communities, share them with us or share them with your neighbor and get people excited about the idea and make some stuff happen, because that's what we can do. And that is, again, part of what our success has been in our community, is that if you have a good idea, you can rally people around it and you can make it happen. And yeah, we've got example after example of that in our community. So thank you for the idea. Keep the ideas coming. We appreciate it.
Erin?
We hosted a nodes and corridors discussion in the fall. Our council is very interested in some of the corridors that lead out of downtown as well as downtown. But one of the things we heard out of that was that some of the most traffic around interest in space in commercial space is from entrepreneurs. But one of the challenges is they don't have a financial history. And so as a community, we need to figure that out, because I agree with you, Catherine. I think that is part of the solution. It's not all of the solution, but I think it's part of the solution, is to figure out how to foster that entrepreneurial community. And part of fostering it is the financial side of it. I think we as a community, one of the things I've always loved about this community is that it is big enough to do some really complex and interesting things, but it's small enough that I am looking at Bankers Trust people, the Rock, sitting right in front of me, as well as a room of other folks who I'm sure are in a position to really hear that part of what's needed for that entrepreneur and that entrepreneurial market that seems to be ripening in our community is financial solutions.
Marcus, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience, again, with the project specifically, and maybe some of the lessons you've learned through that process that could be applicable for other folks.
Yeah, no, totally. And Catherine, I think all the things that we've been saying, spot on. I can even tell you just specifically through just announcing even the Center at 6th, the amount of small business and entrepreneurial spirit from around the country that reached out this because of the opportunity to operate in a place, like you said, that's small yet large, where you can talk to a customer at the same time, reach directly out to the Rock or the Roth and be able to make it all happen. And that's a part of what our focus has been at the Center at 6 project, aside from the actual real estate side, is to provide that back-end services to help with small businesses figuring out how to bank and how to HR and how to, proper accounting and how to properly fill out a PPP loan, those type of things that were, blockages for a lot of businesses trying to get to that next level. But no, I think to echo on everything said, one of the things I see every day, especially in Des Moines right now, are the amount of businesses that generate $2,500, $4,500 a month and are trying to get to that next point to fill that massive product order or fill that massive whatever it is, but they can't figure out how to do that. And I think we're in a unique position right now to be able to really be that hub for entrepreneurialism in the Midwest, just because of the uniqueness of what Des Moines is. And through the project, the Center at 6th, I mean, I've had 50 Cent try to open something at the spot, and I've had just a wide range of people interested in Iowa, interested in Des Moines, that just don't typically see that opportunity. And I think the more we can offer that opportunity, whether it be taking these spaces and turning them into incubator spaces or just offering them up the times now. So
TJ, I wonder from looking across the country at maybe some other unique ways that folks have tried to use some of that empty office space, or if there's been any different ways to use that.
I think for Des Moines has already done what a lot of other communities have. And specifically for buildings downtown, retrofit into a hotel. Obviously, the last couple of years, that would be the first use you jump at, but obviously in years to come, it will be. Looking at housing, that's an easy go-to, but I think what's unique now for some of the towers that have high vacancy, there are some challenges to retrofit to that. So I don't think there's any one answer. Obviously, if there was, we would be doing it. Des Moines proactive and aggressive enough that we jump on it. I think it's going to be, one potential use for one building and another for the next. But I love the idea of that co-working. Gravitate has expanded over the last this past year. Groups like that. I think the challenge I see for maybe retrofitting certain spaces, it's the disconnect between a corporate landlord and what that entrepreneurial kind of need is. So maybe finding somebody in between, whether it's a nonprofit or some other organization to take that on to help understand how to actually work through a lease, create a space and a co-working environment, and then being able to work with the individual entrepreneur. That is what's probably lacking and why we don't see more of it. The other thing I do want to bring up in terms of pop-up restaurants and looking at that as a component for downtown, food is definitely a great way to attract people. And I think that if there's ways that whether it's relaxing the regs regarding the food operators or just coming up with unique ways to get folks in, if a restaurant is only open 3 days a week, is there a way that another entrepreneur that comes in and just does a pop-up for a couple of days? And is that something that can be done? I think getting creative that way is another way to hopefully help attract folks downtown. But I'll start thinking of other solutions for filling the 500,000 square feet that I've got, and I'll come back to it.
A massive indoor park. Ropes course, community learning centers. I mean, we have tons of ideas. I think I know we need the money for it too. We'll figure that out. But I think really look at your own organizations and look at these communities that you travel to for inspiration, and please share those ideas with others.
I've got a 2-year-old, and being trapped in the house all day is not the great on the weekend. But during the course of the pandemic, we would come downtown and take him to the skywalk and just let him run around the skywalk. So, and we ran into other families doing similar things. So the idea of an indoor park or using that space in some way could be really cool too. We'll go for some more questions from the audience. Yeah, right up here. Tiffany, I wonder if you might talk a little bit. You talked about the money part, and through some of the downtown visioning plan, the SBA as being an example, but other groups, what are some of the solutions that are on the table for things like that?
As far as small business support in particular? Well, we thank you for that. And we agree. We actually have a small business team at the partnership, always looking for ways to continue to inspire others and get people at the table, convene conversations to support small business. what we have been investing a lot of time and effort into, our team has done a phenomenal job. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to create pop-up activations with really the primary goal to get people downtown supporting small businesses. Yes, it's really fun to drive around and find hot air balloons hidden around downtown, which actually you can't see them in the dark until they light up. So it was a fun sort of scavenger hunt. But the primary goal was to drive traffic into our small businesses and our local businesses downtown. And we did that over and over again last year. And again, looking at our stats, what we know is that did work. So we're leaning into that this year as well. We did the great DSM hot air balloon hunt. We did the silent disco. We did Chalk the Park. We did Choose Your Own Adventure. We did Out to Lunch. All kinds of different activations, creating these surprise and delight moments that do create that fear of missing out, FOMO, which I'm a big believer that we have to create more FOMO. And part of that too is fear of missing out and supporting local businesses, because you're going to have a different experience with when you're in and shopping or dining at a local business. So, and these are our neighbors. We need to support our neighbors. So very open to additional collaborations, and our team remains committed to small business support.
All right, more questions from the audience. Yeah, Tar.
Yes. So the question was about how do you bring the ideas forward and how do you share them? Well, number one, I think socializing them. Catherine, I think you did a great job of that today. Feel free to reach out to any one of us. And we are all passionate about this community. We will all find a way to pass on the idea or convene others to talk about the idea and just bring more energy to those ideas. But specific to the downtown vision plan, let us know. We've been collecting input through our website, downtowndsmusa.com. But just because our vision planning process is the process itself is winding down to have those bold ideas that we share with the community doesn't mean that we're going to stop collecting ideas and innovating and reimagining what our downtown could be. So reach out anytime, open invitation.
One of the things this community has done well, decades well, is identifying public-private roles, responsibilities, identifying the visions, identifying the visions, which is exactly what Tiffany and the partnership are doing right now. Identifying those visions, identifying those priorities, roles and responsibilities, public-private partnerships, and really going for it. And I think that is the playbook. I really think that's the playbook, continuing to go forward. Leaders stepping up, taking on some of those roles and responsibilities that contribute to the broader vision, accomplish the priorities that we set forth on. That's exactly what we need to do again. And I am very trusting of the process that has been run with this downtown vision plan, Vision Forward. And I think that it is going to identify and unearth those next steps that we really need to run with, that we really need to make downtown the choice location around the region. It's the best place in hundreds of miles. I firmly believe that. It is the best place in hundreds of miles. Watch the starry eyes that come out of the event center over the next 3 weeks. It will show you, it will reinstill the optimism that downtown really is the best place in the Midwest. And we are a premier city across the country.
More questions from the audience? Now I'm going to go to another topic. All right, so Erin, I'm going to go back to you. We talked about the assessments and what some of the potential is there. So I wonder if you could help just give a little bit of an overview about what the potential situation is with assessments and what you're keeping an eye on as far as that goes.
Yep. Downtown is the biggest contributor to our city's tax base, right? How many houses would it take to equate to the assessed value of the building we're sitting in right now? A lot. I can't tell you exactly how many. I'll just say a lot. I'm not a math person.
We'll go figure it out after this.
Yes. And so it is the assessed value, the taxable valuation, that is the most significant part of the city's budget, the City of Des Moines budget, the City of West Des Moines budget. Name your city name your community in Iowa. It is the biggest portion of any community in Iowa's tax base or budget. And so holding the valuation of our downtown real estate is extremely important to the budget for the City of Des Moines. And that budget for the City of Des Moines is what has allowed us to make investments in stormwater infrastructure over the course of the last 3 to 5 to 10 years, depending on how you count. It's what allows us to make contributions to the Global Plaza for the soccer stadium. It's what allows us to implement portions of Connect Downtown. It's what allows us to help with development of demising spaces in vacant office buildings. So it is extremely important to the City of Des Moines budget, and I would venture to say to the success of the community as a whole for the next decade.
So what does the process look like from here? When's the next valuation come through?
The valuations come out in March. This is not a reevaluation year. Next year will be a new valuation year. I looked to my math person on the side of the room, my trusty math person on the side of the room.
So just to summarize, having some of these solutions in place, or people being able to see the potential of that space ultimately is going to be a key part for those valuations, right?
It is, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, Tiffany threw out a slew of ideas like in 20 seconds. And, I think it's that sort of experiential that is really gonna help solve this issue.
You mentioned housing earlier and affordable housing. Is that something you guys are looking at from a city perspective?
Yeah, absolutely.
With those space?
Yeah, absolutely. The downtown vacancy rate on downtown housing is really low right now. We've been very fortunate in that, and that's true in a lot of cities around the country. While the office vacancies have increased, the residential vacancies have decreased or at least held steady. Ours has decreased. Meanwhile, we don't have a lot of construction underway. So we really need to keep that downtown housing market going. We need to continue to pay attention to the affordability aspect of it. We've got some good affordable units that are set to expire here in the coming years. We need to figure out ways to secure their affordability. We have continued to build in affordability as we brought new housing online. And I say we, I don't mean the city, I mean the community. I mean, our developer community has really worked with us in order to implement affordability into the housing. I think they recognize that the housing needs to work for a broad spectrum of people.
Tiffany, I want to connect you into housing a little bit. You talked about the population and 90% of pre-pandemic, I think. And so is part of that. I mean, I can understand if I'm living in downtown, I'm still getting to partake in all the nice, fun things that are happening downtown. So I would imagine the proposition to be living downtown hasn't changed all that much. I know, again, similarly, if you're going to be commuting to work, but if you're just commuting into your living room, you're still living downtown and you can still go take part in all the fun things in downtown. So I'm just curious if maybe what you've seen from population standpoint, is that one of the areas of key focus in the plan going forward?
Yes, we do have a continued focus on housing and housing options. That is part of the conversation, one of the lenses we've been looking through on the downtown vision planning process. But I would say what we're seeing from the data as far as the traffic flow, because the residents downtown, yes, they'll go around to the surrounding areas, but they're already downtown. What we're looking at is the inflow traffic, those that are coming downtown for a specific reason. When are they coming? Why are they coming? And what the data is telling us is that they are coming later in the day. So if you think about it, have a fun team collaboration or connection hour. Maybe it's at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Get them in the office, and then they're going to stick around afterwards. That's what the data is showing. They're more likely to stick around, especially if we have some fun things happening after hours. So in the past, we spent a lot of time trying to fill the work day, the 8 to 5 typical hours. Now we're shifting and spending more time thinking about creating activations, FOMO for the later in the day, and then weekends too. So we have that's a key opportunity for us, and we're digging into the data further to better understand demographics as far as what types of events draw the most people, as well as families in particular. And that is something else that's come up through the Downtown Vision Plan, is that there's been tremendous feedback about making sure that downtown is welcoming to families and people of all ages and all backgrounds, that making sure that our downtown feels and operates as everyone's downtown.
All right, we'll move it to see if there's any more questions from the audience at the moment. Yeah, in the back.
Well, I will say that co-working is huge. I actually office out of Gravitate, and we've seen so many more people utilizing those kinds of co-working spaces rather than setting up their own offices. It removes the overhead. There's so many benefits. You're in a space with so many other people that you can already network just going to work in the morning. And so I think that is an opportunity to look at those co-working, those shared spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the same thing. It's mostly co-working, and even, I mean, you'll see it even in manufacturing across the state, where shared bottling lines, shared. It's one of those things I think a lot of people have adapted just to be able to, and personally at Center at 6, it's the co-working. It's a mixture of, even with our kitchen setup, and I won't go too into detail, but allowing for those pop-up restaurants and for those cooks that only have 2 days a week that they want to operate, or a bodega style one-shop single item type of thing. I mean, I think that most businesses just need a place to send their customers. And if you just provide them a place to send their customers and a place where they can do those things, then they're winning. And so you can have multiple winners in one spot, which can help.
And I think focusing on businesses that really do have that synergy. And so if one business is bringing people in, then they're going to stop at, how many other ones in the area. I think the East Village does it really well. But, we can expand that further into downtown.
One of the questions that I didn't go back to from Catherine's second part of her question was about the folks that are working and might be working remote in other communities as well. So, Tiffany, I wonder maybe if in some of the data that you guys were looking at in the study, what type of effects that might be having on how people are interacting with downtown.
Yes, so we have an opportunity, even those that are living here but working for a business that's not located here. We need to create additional stickiness, and we need to help them recruit other people to live here, because we have a very affordable cost of living here. So it is a overall good place to live, a good place to grow, plant some roots, have an impact on the community. There's a lot of things you can do here that you may not be able to do in the bigger cities. We, of course, hope that they live and work here. But that said, we want to make sure that those that are living here but working for an organization outside of here, outside of our community, that they feel that glue and stickiness to stay here. So our team, Courtney in particular, is leading and working on a new talent marketing campaign that would be edgy, is a good way to put it, edgy and bold, to really help differentiate our community from other communities and help attract those that would have the propensity to move to our community. And we're just going to get started very shortly here on the research phase there that will help us identify that twofold, which pros and cons to each, right? But those that are working for a company here but living elsewhere, how do we attract them here? And those that are living here but working for a business that's located elsewhere, how do we help them attract others to move here? So it's twofold, it's very dynamic, and we're just getting started on that work.
I would have to say that there are concerns to kind of loop back to Catherine. When you have people who are working for companies in Chicago, companies in LA, and they're making much more money and they're able to afford the downtown housing, with the wages here, like I look at most of that housing and I can't afford it. And so I think about the people that we are missing out on by considering it affordable. Just because it's filling up, it may not be the people who are here who are finding it as affordable because of the wages here.
It's an interesting dynamic to think through. Erin?
I think Stacy's absolutely right. We have spent the last 3 or 4 years at the city in part working on housing affordability. We have made some headway. It's the lower levels of affordability that really need some work. But in that mid range, we have a wage issue. I mean, there was a Today Show top 10 cities to live after the pandemic. Des Moines was one of those. The main reason Des Moines was one of those was housing affordability. And so I talked a little bit earlier about roles and how as a community, we all need to step up in the roles in which we serve in order to move the community and downtown forward. One of those roles is, for some, is to really look hard at that wage issue. We'll keep working on the affordability, the housing affordability issue. We will absolutely continue to work on it. But when you look broadly, that's not the root of the issue.
Yeah, Marcus.
I'll piggyback on that just a little bit because that does kind of tie into what we were talking about with the entrepreneurial spirit that we're trying to have in Des Moines. If all you can afford to do is live, you can't reinvest into a business. And so there's that weird in between that you're seeing a lot of people go through where, you know, I make $50K a year, but it costs $48K a year to live. I don't have an extra $5,000 to put into starting my t-shirt line or my candle line, you know, and so finding those in between. That's a part of what we tried to address with Center at 6-2 was creating that affordable, you can live, work, start a business that's affordable atmosphere, but it's tough. So I think it does take a community lift for.
It's one of the things that I thought was really compelling about the Mainframe Studios story. And it, you know, that is one of the bright spots in our community over the last few years, among many. Skate park, all the demolition. Who knew demolition could be so exciting? We've had a lot of that. While you were away, we demolished a lot of things. Dyko's down, Market District is down, so we demolished a lot of things. But on the Mainframe front, as Marcus said, one of the things that has made Des Moines really compelling is that the wages have historically worked. The livability quotient has historically worked because it has allowed people that disposable income to build that entrepreneurial side. It is a key to what Catherine was just suggesting, is that the wage quotient has to continue to work in order to build that vibrancy and that entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Tiffany, I wonder, one of the questions that I keep coming back to is, you know, obviously we've talked about office vacancies. That was an indicator that was an easier indicator to look at historically. Daytime population was another one. I'm just wondering, as part of the vision plan, how do we actually define what success is looking like for downtown, especially going forward when maybe some of those same indicators might need to be different because the landscape is just different now?
So we're members of the International Downtown Association, IDA, and we know through through their research what the KPIs of an emerging or growing downtown, what they need to look like, what that needs to include. So we're actually in the process right now of identifying those KPIs for our downtown, but I would say right now we're looking at the people traffic, which again, we have a source, placer.ai, that allows us to look at that, the traffic flow for downtown. But it's also housing and residents, population growth overall. Also looking at the number of projects. And there are projects in the works. We can't talk about most of them due to NDAs, but there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, and there has not been a slowdown as far as pushing towards the future. But I would say, and this is, how do you measure it? But the big measurement of success is vibrancy. And do you walk around and feel like this is a place you want to be? So we have continued opportunities to just make sure that our downtown feels like it's a place you want to be and that you want to tell your friends about, or you want to bring family members down to experience and explore. That's a hard one to measure, but it is a big success factor that we talk about a lot, the vibrancy, the life, the heart of our downtown.
As we go forward, TJ, maybe what are some of the indicators you'd be looking at from a leasing standpoint, but obviously just as that you're going to be keeping that watchful eye on?
A very simple one, and I think I've shared this before. Looking at the downtown parking garages and seeing cars. It's traffic on 235. It's there's just some very anecdotal kind of evidence of vibrancy, but seeing that more consistent is definitely something that's real, in my opinion. In terms of I guess optimism for the future, a couple of things. I was going to reference the concern for commercial. I do think there's an offset with where residential is in terms of something that we haven't talked about, and you may in weeks to come, but the number of sales for multifamily and the really growth in value. There's some really interesting, I guess, changes in overall valuation of multifamily downtown from out-of-state investment that will be propping up, after incentives are burned off over the next 5 to 10 years on the tax rolls for multifamily downtown. Will hopefully offset whatever we might have on that commercial front. So that to me is also an exciting component where, it's not dire by any means. I think we're seeing that. In terms of other kind of optimism, right now I'm working with 10 different groups that are out of state, whether investor or developers in downtown. Erin, you mentioned the starry-eyed look coming out of Wells Fargo. These folks are coming out of the Des Moines airport, coming downtown and starry-eyed and saying, we're going to invest here, whether that's acquisition of stabilized assets like office buildings or multifamily or what have you, but also looking at development. And I think that's something that even during the pandemic, even during when they read or they watch the Today Show and see the top 10, oh, that's a target list. And that's what we're seeing. And I'm really excited about is, it's interesting that an out-of-state investor or developer is betting on downtown, and we're kind of wondering, well, should we be? Well, if an out-of-state is, we sure as heck should be. So,
Stacy, if from your perspective, what indicators might you be looking at?
Yeah, I think just really looking at the number of members, the involvement from the chamber perspective. Everything has been really quiet the last couple of years with downtown, and it's hard to even get connected with a lot of the businesses because they're not in the office. And so just seeing that increased involvement, that connection, more people attending events, coming back, asking for services, I think will be a big win for us.
How has membership looked like for you? And I know it's a common challenge and issue for a number of chambers and organizations. So just curious what that's looked like for you guys.
And definitely an increase in small business and nonprofit members. But I think Catherine can speak to this as well. The chamber membership definitely has taken a hit over the pandemic.
Yeah. You know, we talked today. This is one of our first ones back up here in a breakfast event, and I'm used to rolling out of bed and going to my basement to do this on Zoom. So we were curious, what was the room going to look like? And we sold out the room, and so I didn't know what that was going to look like. This was an indicator again back to us to go, well, we can still do live in-person events. We didn't know exactly what that was going to be looking like going forward. So it was nice to see that. I'm going to give everybody a chance to get on the panel to give a final closing thought here as we wind down. And but before we do so, just want to make sure that everybody is aware of a few things that we've got coming up. First of all, our team, our newsroom, Emily Barsky and Kathy Bolton, who covers commercial real estate for us. I'm sure they're going to be writing about this in the future as we go forward. You can read about all those about today's event. Also, John Retzloff in the back, he's been live streaming us to Facebook. We've been dabbling with that as well, and that's been a fun project for us. So you have a recording of this that you'll be able to share with your team and anybody you think might be interested in learning more about it. You can do that by signing up for our Business Record Daily e-newsletter. If you don't already get that, it's the easiest way to stay nice and plugged in. It's free. You can do that at businessrecord.com/sign up. That's where you'll find all the coverage and, of course, find information about any of our upcoming events that we're doing as well. If you enjoyed today's event and being back in person with us, we've got a number of things coming up here in the next couple of months. Our 40 Under 40 event is going to be on March 30th. That is going to be out at Prairie Meadows. We're going to be doing a live announcement of that of the class next Wednesday over the lunch hour. You can follow along on Facebook for that if you're curious on who our honorees will be this year. So be sure to tune in. Tickets will go on sale at that point as well. Our commercial real estate forum is going to be on April 20th. That's going to be out at the West Des Moines Sheraton. Our panel is going to be discussing a number of topics, and we're still working on the program for that. We'll be opening up tickets for that about 5 weeks or so beforehand. And our next Power Breakfast, mark your calendar for May 12th. We're going to be talking about corporate social responsibility and some of the dynamics in today's world and how businesses need to be thinking about how to position themselves and take for both their employees and in the community as well. And that's a big topic, of course, that is bubbling around us all the time. So we're going to be excited to tackle into those topics here in the coming weeks and months. You can sign up for all those events at businessrecord.com/events. All right, last question. Just going to give you a chance to give a final takeaway, maybe something we didn't get to today that you think the audience can take back with them today. Marcus, I'll have you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main thing, of course, everyone will buy a bottle of whiskey from.
And where can they do that at, Mark?
Hy-Vee, online, Fairway, come and go. But the main thing is just to keep caring. Like, you know, getting together and having these conversations is what's needed. Keep investing in the community. Keep trying to find ways to support small minority businesses, and it truly does benefit the entirety of our state. And anyone looking to have a conversation about Center at 6, we're still building and working through that, and so there's still opportunity to be involved and growth with that too. So thank you for having me.
And what's the name of your whiskey again?
Burn the Boats Whiskey and Silk Road Bourbon. You can order it online nationwide for your cousins or wherever it is. shopzayedrye.com. So
perfect. All right, Stacy.
You know, I look at a lot of other cities across the U.S., and Columbus, Ohio is one that I've looked at a lot. And they're just trying to differentiate themselves as the capital because no one knows them versus Cincinnati or Cleveland. So we already have that, like, we are the city in Des Moines that people know, that people love. We have the reputation. And so it just goes up from here. Support your local community, visit those restaurants, and just, you know, I think we keep talking about, if you have an idea, share it with people, get that excitement. It's so much that word of mouth and that community building that is so important in moving things forward right now.
All right, TJ.
In terms of worried about the future for vacancy of office and so forth. I think that's one piece that we'll continue to work through it. We'll find and identify users. We'll find new uses for buildings. I think back in 2006, when I moved back to Des Moines, the partnership was one of the organizations that I reached out to, and I had a chance to get involved early through YPC, through the Leadership Institute. It's ways to really start connecting. It wasn't necessarily on our entrepreneurial standpoint, but just supporting these organizations is extremely important. And I think that's part of the solve for this in the future. The city of Des Moines, continues to do, great things, very proactive. We've got a lot of smart people in the room, and I think just continuing that, betting on that as part of this. Again, don't worry about vacancy rates for office space. Just worry about keeping people excited about downtown.
I'm going to echo that. I was going to say, I really think we're in a transition period, and a lot of us need to stop worrying about workforce coming back downtown. Not everybody in this room can do that, but a lot of us do. TJ probably needs to keep worrying about it, but a lot of us need to quit worrying about that and really dig into making downtown that choice destination for workers, for visitors from afar, for our population, our growing regional population of 600,000 people strong. I mean, those are great numbers to support an active, vibrant downtown. And we need to remove barriers. We all need to work on removing those barriers to downtown. Some of them kind of worked before. It wasn't that big of a deal. We didn't need absolutely everybody. We need everybody all in right now. And to your point, as you opened this up, Chris, it's no longer a question about the need for vibrant, thriving downtown. It is an absolute. It is an absolute key to the region's success. And so we need to work on those barriers that still exist. The geographical one. Is it too far for me to come from Waukee into downtown for a hot air balloon event? Is it too far for us to come from Pleasant Hill to an Iowa Cubs game? The financial barriers, they're real, they exist. Stacy just pointed it out. We need for downtown not to have a barrier to entry on the residential side. We for there not to be a barrier to entry for civic center shows, for Iowa Cubs games, for eating out at restaurants. We need to work on that from a wage perspective. We need to work on it from a philanthropic perspective. Are there ways to be able to help with admissions to various things? We've done a great job on summer camps. I've seen it all over as I've looked for my kids. Can you not afford this? Call us. There are great opportunities, and we need to advance them, and we need to sing them from the lofts, that there are opportunities, financial ways to be involved in downtown. And then the perceptual. Downtown isn't for me. I don't feel welcome here. That is absolutely not true. Welcome your visitors as they pour out of Ivy Hall and Wells Fargo Arena. Welcome those visitors. Make them feel like they have let them know they've come to our capital city and how much we appreciate them being here. Welcome those folks on a board who may be newbies. Make them feel like they're welcome and they're involved. Find different ways to help broad spectrums of our population, the broadest spectrums of our population, feel like they are welcome in our downtown.
Tiffany, final thought.
Yes. Well, thank you again, everybody, for making time and for being here. It is so good to see so many people caring about our downtown and making connections. Hope to see you all again, March 26th at the DSM Book Festival. It will be at Capitol Square. We have lots of other events and activations that we're planning in downtown. DSM would invite you to join us at each and every one of those. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your neighbors. The more people that we get out and about downtown, the better for all, and go support those local businesses while you're here. But I'll just leave you with this. This is a very exciting time for our downtown. We are reimagining everything and we're planning for the future. I think of the Lily Tomlin quote, somebody needs to do something about that. And then you realize that somebody is me. I am somebody. Well, you are somebody. You can make a difference. So stop and think about what can you do to make a difference. Is it going to support a local shop or eating out? Is it taking a meeting in a coffee shop instead of via Zoom? Is it going down to one of these surprise and delight activations that we're creating? Is it going to the book festival? Is it going to the farmer's market? Is it going to the iCubs? You have a choice, and you can be part of shaping the future of our downtown. And I would invite you to please continue the dialogue. Reach out to us anytime with those ideas. And as you are experiencing these amazing things in our downtown, tell other people about it. Don't be shy, don't be humble, brag about it. You know what? Downtown has it going on. And post about it on social media. Write a blog for us about it if you'd like. We'll blast it out to thousands of people. Tell the story. We need you. You all have a place in building the future of our downtown.
Thanks, Tiffany, and thank you again to everybody today for attending and spending time coming out here. We know you have choices on where to spend your time and where to be at, and to come on down and spend it with us learning. We really appreciate that. Again, thank you to our sponsors, BKD, Brown Winnick, and of course, Down the Rock, Coffin here, Bankers Trust for their help. As a locally owned business, we too are downtown, of course, and we've been working hard to navigate the challenge of the past couple of years. And although the calendar is flipped again, we're going to continue working and providing that coverage for you all. So our goal is to help you do business better. And you can ensure that we do that by helping us with our content and helping us support our business as well. So if you're not already a member of the Business Record, we'd love to have you as a member. If you're interested in sponsorships or participating in helping put on programs like this, please feel free to reach out as well. We're here to help you and to help to support the community. Again, thank you for spending your time with us. If we can ever be of any help, if I can ever be of any help, or our newsroom can, please feel free to reach out our way. That concludes our program, but before we do, can we get a big round of applause and thank you to our panelists.